Hey there, fourth trimester listeners. Our program today is proudly sponsored by Family Album, your secure haven for sharing baby photos and videos. Head over to the App Store today, search Family Album, one word, download the app, and start creating a legacy of love, one photo at a time. Hi, I'm Sarah Trott, and welcome to the Fourth Trimester Podcast. I'm a new mama, and this podcast is all about postpartum care for the first few months following birth, the time period also known as the fourth trimester. My postpartum doula, Esther Gallagher, is my co-host. She's a mother, grandmother, perinatal educator, birth and postpartum care provider. Fourth trimester care, our topic, is about the practical, emotional, and social support parents and baby require. And importantly, it helps set the tone for the continuing journey of parenting. Hi, this is Sarah Trott. Welcome back to the Fourth Trimester Podcast. I'm here today with my co-host Esther Gallagher and a special guest, Lynn Benson, who I'll introduce in just a moment. I wanted to remind all of our listeners today that we have a website, which is www.fourthtrimesterpodcast.com. You can go and sign up for our newsletter. You can also go onto Facebook and find us, Fourth Trimester Podcast, and join our community. Please go on Facebook and like us. That would be fantastic. And also we have an Instagram. So if you enjoy Instagram, you can follow us, Fourth Trimester Podcast, on Instagram as well. So thank you so much. So I'm going to introduce Lynn Benson now. She is someone who is an author, a co-author of a book called Chicken Soup for the Soul, Life Lessons for Busy Moms. And she has quite an extensive background working in early childhood education and in social work. She's earned her master's degree in social work, and she carries a diverse and exceptional background. She began her career as director of operations for a national multi-unit childcare and elderly daycare company, overseeing numerous facilities throughout California. And she has co-developed, launched, and maintained innovative curriculum for the intergenerational daycare programs, which serves both children and seniors. So as a social worker, she's learned firsthand the plight of the elderly who could not endure without outside assistance. And Lynn became their advocate, providing help, organization, and services that they needed day to day to endure and survive various crises that they might be going through. So we're really honored to have her here on our program today. So thank you so much, Lynn, for being on our program.
And thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And Lynn, you're a mom.
Yes.
We'd love to hear a little bit about your own fourth trimester experience.
So both of my daughters they're teenagers now, 13 and 15 years of age. But I do remember my fourth trimester quite well. I have to say, with my background of social work, working in the early childhood education field, I felt that I was going to be quite prepared for being a new mom. And it was much more challenging than I thought. And I fortunately, I wouldn't say I anticipated it, but after reaching out and speaking to other new moms, which I think is such an important thing to do, and just talking with others and finding out other people's experiences, it was highly encouraged for me to get a doula. And money was tight, and but fortunately, I did make that decision, and it was just really for a few hours a day, for the first few weeks, just to help get my bearings. But with my first child, it was a really, really tough delivery process. It was a very, very tough process in terms of me recuperating from that. And my daughter ended up in the NICU after 5 days. For about 5 days, she was in the NICU. And that whole process was just really, really challenging. I could go on and on, but I'm not sure, I will just say that in general, it was a tough process, and I learned a lot through the way. I definitely felt with my second one that I was more prepared to put certain things in places that would help me further along with all aspects in terms of my, emotional and mental health well-being, and a greater support system, an organized approach to help facilitate the process, especially with having at the time, a 2-year-old and a newborn. So I learned a lot along the way.
Yeah, that sounds hard. We had a guest recently talk about her experience with twins, and her twins were preemies and her babies were in the NICU. And she said it was so hard to have family constantly asking, when are the babies coming home? Because that was her question too. And there was no answer for that. They just didn't know. And just as a personal experience, that sounds very hard.
Yeah, it really is. And when you're just going by, praying and having faith that it will be okay. And yeah, it's a very, very scary process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for sharing that. And, so you talked about being a little more prepared for the second time around and having a little one. What do you think was the main difference there for you? Was it just like having had a newborn once before, you're in a different, you sort of know more what to expect?
I do think that for many new moms that are really willing to share, the first few months, many do go into that survival mode of just really trying to just get through each day with taking care of their little one and making sure they get sleep. It's a tough process. So, I do think that you see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I really don't want to go negative. I mean, there's definitely moments in the experience where you're just amazed by this newborn child and amazed by these milestones, and there's so much beauty and wonderful things that go along the way. So it's just that I don't think enough people will talk about that there are, real challenges as well with the sleep deprivation. You're trying to heal. For those that breastfeed, that in itself for many can be a really tough journey. So it's just a new experience, along the way. After a few months, especially by the time your baby is about 6 months old, there tends to be a little bit more of a routine, and there's, more systems in place, and the confidence starts to build a little bit as a parent, and you're able to get out more and do more things. And so, but those first few months can be very, very tricky, especially for those that don't have a strong support system in place. Depending on how available their partner is, their spouse, there may be family in the area, within a few miles, but everyone has different circumstances going on where, for some, for many, they're not available. So, everyone is very unique and different in terms of, their support systems and their own personal disposition, their ability just to navigate, day to day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And your support system included a doula, it sounds like.
Yes. And so that's the other thing I want to emphasize, that I think it's really important for each person to really, before having your child, to sort of tap into that self-awareness piece and really self-assess, how you operate and what you think your own personal needs are, and what are your resources and what is your support system. And that is one thing that I did with my first. One of the best gifts that my parents gave me, because they weren't as available as they wanted to be, is they also actually helped as a gift, help pay for part of the doula, which I was so grateful for. When caregivers say, how can I help? Even though I had a wealth of experience and a background, again, I don't feel like, we could ever be fully really prepared. And the doula that came in with our first, child, she was absolutely incredible. I mean, we were so exhausted. And again, my daughter was in and out of the NICU, and she came in, and the first thing she did is she looked around our home and she said, okay, I'm going to create this coffee table, which is high, somewhat high and elevated, into another diaper changing station, for different reasons. Each home is unique and different things that could be helpful. But she basically went around the house and just kind of reorganized and reshifted things just to help our home function better. And then, she was very directive, which I very much appreciated, in a very nurturing manner. She said, please, both of you go take a nap. This is what I'm going to be doing, while you're taking a nap. Really, I mean, it it was very much of, it's all about, okay, what do your parents need at this particular time, at this particular day, at this particular moment? So that's what was our greatest need with our first child. With our second child, I was working. I knew I wasn't going to be able to be working for the first, handful of weeks or what have you, working from home. But still, I knew it was all about eating and sleeping and taking care of, the basic needs. But I knew, and I had a 2-year-old at that point, and I did have a nanny a few days a week to help because I was working, and we kept that in place because I knew that we needed help with our 2-year-old. But where I'm going with this is that, again, rethinking ahead of time, what were our needs? It was the middle of the night that I knew I was going to need help with, and I would pump, my breast milk whenever possible, and the doula came in the middle of the night for about 7 hours, so I could get as much sleep as possible. So ahead of time, it's thinking and planning what are the actual needs, of each individual depending on their circumstances. And I just thank God for that decision. Really, it really made a difference.
Well, I just want to break in, Lynn, and say to our listeners, our newer listeners, that we talk a little bit more in depth about what those needs will be. Since from our vantage point, most people who haven't had children actually don't know.
Right.
They don't know that they're going to, need 10 ounces of food for every ounce of breast milk they're producing, or in addition to the calories that keep them alive. They don't know that they're not going to be in a position to prepare their own meals and snacks. And therefore, someone needs to organize that appropriately. And frankly, most friends and family don't know what that means. So we go into just how to make that self-assessment. It's not based on only the things you know about yourself. It's based on some things you don't know about what it means to be postpartum. So that's why we do this show.
That's right. It's great. It's wonderful that you guys do this show. It's so needed, everyone's different in terms of their comfort level to outreach and, to talk to others, to get the real deal. And there's some that are just not as comfortable. So to be able to have a platform of what you guys provide is tremendous. I think it's wonderful.
We're so happy to have you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, another thing that I think is worth mentioning is, part of the process, again, is before having your child, is trying to think through, a bit about your own personality and the family dynamics and how tricky it can get, in terms of conflicts and which is normal. Conflict is a part of our everyday lives, and it's how we work through that, which, is important and can get tricky at times, especially with family. And so, it's a time to figure out a way, to really tap into what are my needs as a new mom and a new dad, everyone has an opinion. You're going to get a ton of opinions from a lot of different people. And so what I've encouraged others to do, is respectfully listen, because these are wise people, from their own experiences. But again, everyone's unique and different. And I think it's really important for people to, go ahead and again, listen to your loved ones. What do they have to say? And then you as a collective team, to figure out, okay, what do we think makes sense and how to do this and move forward? It's, and also to really figure out a way to get inside and get that ability to be assertive with, no, I'm not comfortable with you coming and living with us for a week. That's just not going to work. That's different for everybody, right? I mean, it's not so easy to say that and do that. But in certain circumstances, you kind of might need to, and it may create a rift. And in other circumstances, in my situation, my mother-in-law from the East Coast, because we were living in California at the time, she came with us. She came out to be with us with both, when both of my girls were born. And we knew that we needed to get the lay of the land for the first few weeks before having her out. We just kind of drew the line, and she was fine with it. she wanted to come out earlier. And we said, no, this is what we need. And she respected it, and then at one point, I'll share this personal story, again, in the spirit of being, assertive with taking care of our needs. She was fascinated by breastfeeding. She in her generation, many didn't breastfeed. And she wanted to watch me pump when I was pumping the breast milk. And I remember feeling sort of uncomfortable with that, but at the same time, I was like, okay, I'll go ahead and do this. And she was fascinated watching the whole process. It was a bit uncomfortable, but I got through it. But, every now and then I would pump, and the next time she watched, I remember thinking, okay, this is really out of my comfort zone, but I didn't feel comfortable saying anything. Even, me, who I, at the time, felt I was a fairly assertive person. And then finally at the third, And then the third time, I just said, Betty, I love you. I really appreciate your support. I'm super uncomfortable with you sitting here watching me. I need my own space. And she got it. So again, it's we got to figure out a way to really make sure that we, nurture and take care of ourselves in the process.
Right. And I will just add in there, you're feeling uncomfortable during, a moment where you're trying to produce milk for your child doesn't help you produce milk for your child.
Excellent point, right? Yeah.
It can have a dampering effect on milk production.
And
of course, your mother-in-law didn't understand that, right? Personally or in any way.
Right.
And hopefully, again, our podcast goes a long way towards helping those friends and family learn about the impacts they might have, for better or worse, on new moms and their new families.
Right.
This is one of those things, like it just, it may feel to you like, oh, I was just uncomfortable and I needed to be assertive. Well, there's a whole physiology behind that discomfort that's going to affect you and your child.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because that is such an important component as well. It's all so interconnected.
Yeah.
And it's so important, to recognize that.
Yeah. And, when you're the new mom, you may or may not know this information, but you don't need to be in a position to have to explain it all either.
Yeah. And I'm sure this is another thing that you guys talk about on your show is, the other piece that I remember struggling with was, again, wanting to be, super mom, superhero, super all of, I can do it all. And needing to really put that, just to be mindful of figuring out a way to shed that, at all costs, and to really tap into, I'm a very compassionate person. I deeply care and love about other people. And it was a process of having to really focus on that self-compassion and being gentle with myself and taking care of myself just the way I do for other people. Mm-hmm. And I think that's such an important process that new moms, we're so hard on ourselves. Many of us, throughout our journey of motherhood. And, I remember just feeling very vulnerable as a new mom. Am I doing this right? Am I taking care of my child okay? And I'll share this story when my daughter ended up in the NICU. That was devastating. And at one point I blamed myself. She had jaundice. And it was one of those things where this is where I will say to emphasize to parents, to pay attention to your gut instinct. And this is where I will praise myself, because I certainly did that. When Alana, my older daughter, was 5 days old, and I was in the middle of breastfeeding, and I remember the pediatrician saying, look out for jaundice. I didn't know much about jaundice. I really didn't. And you just said, look, these are the signs for jaundice, look out for that. And anyway, she seemed very healthy. She seemed to be thriving, but I saw a little bit of yellow in the corner of her eye, very little. And honestly, my husband didn't notice it. The doula didn't notice it. It was very mild, but I pointed out to the doula, and the doula said, I see what you're talking about. I really think, to be on the safe side, just bring her into the pediatrician. And then I was going back and forth. Am I overreacting? Is it too much? But, and I kudos to the doula for saying that, because that helped with my inner voice as well. Got her to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician was like, yeah, she might be a little bit jaundiced. The worst case scenario is that we send home some lights, for her. I'm not too worried. And I kid you not, about 2.5 hours later, 3 hours later, they get the blood work back right away. He said, stop everything you're doing, get your daughter to Cedars-Sinai in LA, immediately. The NICU is waiting for her. Her bilirubin levels were at 30, which is devastating. That's for those that know about, bilirubin levels. And he said, it must be a mistake. She would have been orange. He as a pediatrician was like, couldn't fathom. So we get her over there, and I said, well, I'm just going to feed her. Can I feed her? No, don't feed her. Get her, to the NICU. And, they retested, and they tested at 29, bilirubin. And so she, fortunately made it through it and did okay, but it was a very, very scary time. And I don't bring this up to scare parents because, a lot of times, this is a very unique situation in terms of what happened on my end. But I do think that there is something to when people say trust your instincts. And again, I went through a process of being very hard on myself, did I do something to create that situation? It can be a challenging process for sure.
Hey, fellow parents, can we take a moment to reflect on the joyous chaos that is parenthood? Those days when our hearts swell with love at the sight of our little ones and we're bursting at the seams to share every adorable moment with the world. But let's be real. Some things are better kept in the family, and your loved ones who matter the most aren't always close by, and they might not be that tech savvy either. So how can you easily share your baby's beautiful growth with loved ones while keeping your precious memories secure? I remember the frustration of trying to use some of the big tech photo solutions, only to find they fell short of what I needed. That's when I stumbled upon something truly remarkable, the Family Album app. The Family Album app was created to give parents a secure and easy way to share photos and videos with loved ones. It's an orderly and totally secure haven for your family's personal memories. I love that there's no third-party ads, no unwanted eyes, unlimited storage, and that it's totally free. So to all the parents who are out there still trying to use other messaging apps for your kids' photos, it's time to level up your family photo game with a free photo sharing app. Head over to the App Store today, search Family Album, one word, download the app, and start creating a legacy of love one photo at a time.
Mm-hmm. Well, you said it yourself earlier, like people go into survival mode and they think they just have to suffer through. That includes physical pain, and that includes things that you're talking about, like self-doubt, saying like, oh, just, I'm just being anxious. I just have to get through this. But no, actually, your intuition was a very legitimate concern that potentially saved your daughter's life. So
yeah, I see that now. Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like there's something to self-care and to getting out of survival mode and being respectful of oneself physically, mentally, emotionally. And having the wherewithal to say, well, wait a minute, I think something's not right, and listening to that. And it sounds like your doula who, to be specific, it sounds like she's a postpartum doula, not just a birth doula, because she was there with
Correct.
you. Correct. With your newborn. Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Like she also was there to help reinforce your feelings and your gut instinct, which was absolutely right. So that sounds like a close call on a scary situation.
Very much so. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. My mind's racing with so many things in terms of, but I'm sure the other thing that you talk about on your show quite a bit is self-care, and how to, make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, of our basic needs. And one of the things I'll just mention that I found to be very helpful, is having an organized approach to it the best of our abilities. And this is something that new moms can do before having their child, is to think through different organized approaches that can make things go along in an easier capacity. So for example, I created a form for breastfeeding. So I knew which breasts I was leaving off with and how much time I spent on each breast. I had a clipboard and, with a pen that I would have, completely accessible. And I also had a sleep and a diapering form because with the pediatrician, they asked, especially with the diapering, the urine output, the bowel movement, what color was it? That's a lot to remember. So I had, a bunch of Xerox forms of being able to, keep track of everything. And that was really, really helpful, for sure. And then, again, just trying to keep, sections of the refrigerator. This may seem silly, but having a section of the refrigerator that's just for you, where you have a yogurt or a string cheese or, some almonds or in the cabinet, just a section where you just know where everything is when you're exhausted and you need to grab something super quickly. And the other thing that I can't emphasize enough is to do whatever you can to get outside at least once a day. And if it's raining out, maybe stand under an overhang, go in the backyard, stay in your pajamas if you just feel like you can't take a walk down the street. But just getting outside in terms of that self-care component can make such a difference to be connected with nature and something beyond, the inside walls of your home. Because I do think that isolation is a really challenging component to this. And staying connected, if you're too tired to try to connect with someone, for an hour, which could be so helpful on so many levels of connecting with others. But again, just even getting outside, is trying to identify specific steps that can help with our mental health well-being.
I will pop in on this and just say that I think it's also important for parents to have somebody who knows enough about the physiological recovery period that can actually advise them in the first 2 to 6 weeks, one day at a time, about whether their body and their healing process is coming along sufficiently that taking a walk outside the home is appropriate.
Gotcha.
It's not to say that it wouldn't be, but I do think that moms often hear take a walk every day and they think they're going to walk around the block.
Right.
And that could be devastating, actually. Yep. So just knowing what's appropriate from one day to the next in your initial physiological recovery period, as we've stressed again and again on the show, is quite important for moms so that they can balance those various needs. And then to not go on a walk with somebody who's used to going on a 3-mile run. Go for a walk with somebody who can walk beside you at your speed and check in with you every few steps. Okay, what do you think? We have to get all the way back home. Would now be the right time to turn around instead of let's see if we can make it to the next corner. That is not helpful to a healing and recovering mom.
Yeah, Esther, I appreciate you bringing everything you just brought up. I appreciate you bringing that up because I will say that with my firstborn, the first 3 to 4 weeks, I physically, it was a very, very tough delivery. I was prepped for C-section and was given maybe a few more chances to push, and which ended up working out. But my body, I probably would have recovered faster and better if I honestly had the C-section. It was very tricky, but my recovery process was brutal. And I do appreciate you bringing that up because that's correct. I wasn't in a place where I could just walk around the block in the beginning. That is completely accurate. And I would say that just getting outside in my backyard, though, which I did do by myself or with Alana, just sitting outside at times was healing. That's all I was able to do.
The sun on your face.
Right.
Can be better than staying cooped up in the house. Yeah.
Right. And then that was my capacity at that particular time and point before able to take it a step further. Yeah.
Yeah.
So assuming that your body is at a place where physically it's okay, going outside and getting some fresh air is definitely highly recommended within the realm of what's appropriate for a healing process.
Yeah. Very, very much so.
So something that we wanted to touch on with you, since caregiving is an area that you work on a lot, Lynn, is what are the signs that someone might be suffering from burnout as a result of caregiving?
The pure exhaustion that people feel and lack of energy and not able to think straight. And, it's tricky because in many cases, as a new mom, we will go in and out of those experiences. The part that where as a social worker with my social work background, in addition to working with elders, I also worked with children, youth, and family in a mental health clinic, and I've done outpatient work and different things. And when it gets to a point where you're not able to function, where it's causing significant distress or impairment and being able to function, that's really where the bigger concern comes in. The burnout, the word burnout and fatigue, a lot of times to me, it seems it can go hand in hand as a new mom, depending on the day, and what's going on. I think that the burnout is that when that excessive fatigue and exhaustion is just getting to be so much, there needs to be a way to, reassess and figure out and relook at, again, resources, support system, and start figuring out a way to, problem solve with some decision making to try to help get more support to address that burnout.
And isn't it ironic that in those moments of burnout and feeling completely exhausted, that's the hardest time to make decisions and to pull resources together? It's just so unfair.
It's so true. Mm-hmm. I know. It really is, because we'd never be
burnt out. Yeah. We'd never be burnt out if we could pull ourselves together and ask for help.
So yeah, I know, right? I know it's it's so true, and it's the burnout thing is we can all, I think most of us can relate. It's very real, and I also think that we just have to figure out a way to allow ourselves to be, again, gentle on ourselves, that we're going to be tired at times. We have to give into it, I guess. And, before having kids, I used to have a fairly organized home and everything had its place, and it wasn't super, hyper clean, but, I had a system in place for everything. And I think that, once having kids, the dishes piled up a bit more in the sink, and, and certain things weren't as tidy, and we really, to avoid that burnout, it's really important that we just have to kind of, rework, some of those expectations and, kind of give in to, not having to have everything, so perfect.
Yeah, I think, appropriately lowering what we think are our standards to a manageable place. And by manageable, I mean, you're taking care of your basic human needs first. Your basic human needs are for sleep, nourishment, and positive human interaction.
Right.
It is not a basic human need to live in a house that's pristine, actually.
Right. Yeah. And right. I mean, it's so, and the thing is that, I can't remember the exact percentage, but I think about 60% of what we do day in and day out is very behaviorally driven. So we just like brushing our teeth. We tend to have a certain routine in the morning. We wake up, we brush our teeth, we brush our hair, whatever it is. We're very behavioral driven. And so part of what has to happen once we become a new mom is we really need to look at that and try to, take in different behaviors that can help support us, to be more balanced in the process of that self-care.
Mm-hmm. Yep. What you can't outsource, don't do. Just leave it alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about how we can prepare before baby arrives.
Nice. Yeah.
I think, just going back to sort of assessing your resources and your support system, is key, and making sure that whether it's hiring a doula or having certain family members lined up that you feel that you could do well with, in the process. Those are all very important factors. The home environment, to the best of our ability, I will say that it's really important for each person, again, to the best of your ability, to scan the home environment and see if the home is set up in a capacity that will help support your own family lifestyle, whatever's going on. So, for example, something that I did with my 2-year-old was still in diapers, which many 2-year-olds are, when my newborn was coming. And I brought a stroller in the house for an actual stroller. I understand that at times our newborns are going to cry and people will say, it's not a problem for them to cry for a few minutes and so on. But my capacity level at times, I just needed peace. I needed quiet. I literally put, Jenna, when she was, 2 weeks, 3 weeks old, if she was in a situation where if I put her down, she'd be screaming her head off. At times, I would put her in the stroller, and with one foot, I would rock the stroller back and forth while I was changing my older daughter, Alana, at the diaper, changing station. That in itself was it helped me have peace. It just helped with my whole mental health well-being. It just made a difference. And then, so even at times, I'll even admit, I don't know if this is, a little nutty, but, at times, again, if Jenna was in a place where she needed, some extra holding and if she, and that experience of being in this stroller, which it was a really nice stroller, very comfortable. And I literally, getting through the dishes because I remember this specifically, it was piled way high. Jenna was, having a tough time. And I had the stroller right next to me and I was doing dishes while I had my foot on the stroller, just kind of moving it gently back and forth. And for me, it was night and day. Another thing that I did from an organizational perspective, my 2-year-old needed supervision at that point. She was a late walker and she would fall a lot and she just needed extra supervision. So we had, an upstairs, downstairs, and it was one of those things where at times, she would need to be in the same room while I was taking care of Jenna. But I had a basket with age-appropriate things in the basket in each main room of the house, whether it was the family room, in Jenna's room, up in our bedroom. I had a few key areas, where, again, there was a basket in each room of the house where we spent a lot of time, where Alana was able to be busy and engage with age-appropriate activities. Little things like that, can make a difference.
Yeah, I love that. I personally learned that trick later than and looking back on it than I wish, but having those little baskets are awesome. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Well, great. Thank you so much again for being a guest in our program. We've really enjoyed our conversation with you.
Likewise, I appreciate it so much. And thank you for the great work you guys are doing.
Thanks, Lynn.
Well, thanks. And thanks again to our listeners who are out there. Please, as a reminder, you can check us out at fourthtrimesterpodcast.com. We're also putting transcripts of our program on the show as well. So look out for our transcript library if you'd like to see that and read that and share that with friends as well. So thanks so much. And we'll see you next time on the Fourth Trimester. You can subscribe to this podcast in order to hear more from us. Thank you for listening, everyone, and I hope you'll join us next time on the Fourth Trimester. The theme music on this podcast was created by Sean Trott. Hear more at soundcloud.com/Sean Trott. Special thanks to my true loves, my husband Ben, daughter Penelope, and baby girl Evelyn. Don't forget to share the Fourth Trimester podcast with any new and expecting parents. I'm Sarah Trott. Goodbye for now.
Hello again, bicycle man. I know you're doing all that you can. I wrote the song, simple and true. I wrote the song, I'll sing a song for you. You got your wheels, you got your gears. You ride around town without any fear. You got your pedals You got your brakes. You always wear your helmet for safety's sake. Hello again, bicycle man. I know you're doing all that you can. I wrote the song, simple and true. I wrote the song, I sing a song for you. Hello again, bicycle man. I know you're doing the best that you can. I wrote the song, simple and true. I wrote the song, I sing a song for you.